So after we go through a presentation, I will be presenting sometimes, other people will be presenting other times, and then sometimes they'll do it together. We will go into open Q&A, where we can discuss the ramifications of the current events and stuff we've seen against the backdrop of the presentations. In a civil manner, I do not want any open hostility here from anybody for any reason. This can get hectic, but we should be civil, level-headed individuals. The streets are unraveling in the larger cities. We don't have to mirror that here. And so we don't have to agree. I mean, it's ideal because we're supposed to. I mean, how can two people really walk together without agreement? Eventually the disagreement will bubble up to the surface, and oftentimes that's when conflict ensues. So let's be civil, and genuine unity is possible after disagreement departs and not before. How many of you guys have seen that little coexist bumper sticker? That does not work. That's the problem, not the solution. The problem is when everybody wraps himself in their own brand and then becomes militant behind some banner, and we stop being honest and kind with one another like brothers and sisters, and under one head above, which is, of course, our Father above. All right, so did you press the record button, sweetheart?
Yes.
Okay. If the pause button shows, then that means it's recording. Cool. All right. How many of you guys have seen this headline? 7,000 Gazans riot at Israel's southern border. Yeah, we have. It's pretty hectic. We see a problem in our southern border, don't we? Yeah. We see what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I'll have you know that the caravans we see coming up through South America are part of a strategic effort to undermine the sovereignty of this nation. If you look at Maduro of Venezuela and see who he deferred to, he sent his foreign minister to talk to Bashar Assad of Syria because, I quote, he knows how to deal with Western aggression. So now that we're the innocent victim here. So he sent the foreign minister over again to talk to Syria because Syria knows how to put down Western Zionist aggression. This is their terminology, not mine. Arabs riot as Jews are allowed to enter Temple Mount on Jerusalem Day, what they call Al-Quds. How many of you guys have seen this one? The hostility. Jerusalem is going to be and is now a cup of drunkenness for all of the nations. Father above said in the prophet Zechariah and elsewhere that he would make it a cup of a stumbling block for all the nations, and all who come against her will be dashed into pieces via east and west, north and south. It is a cup, a crucible, if you will. So this is the place where the king reigns, the Messiah. He comes to reign in Jerusalem. Anybody aware of that? Yay, nay?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good.
City of the Great King.
The city of the great king, yeah. In Hebrew, Sar Shalom means Prince of Peace. And there won't be any shalom or shalom until Messiah gets here. And that's not just because Johnny Cash said so, but it isn't because he didn't say so either. He did. He got that inspiration from the scriptures. So we don't want a false peace, a pseudo peace. Security is not the same as peace. Peace is the word shalom. Security is the word shalva. One of them is diametrically opposed to the other. The Prince of Security is from the north, Levant, a son of the left hand, Balad Asham. When you're facing east, guys, which direction is east? Think hard on this one. Right? When you're facing east, then the left hand is this one, right? North. And when you're facing east, the right hand is what? South, which is Ben Yamin, son of the right hand, which oddly enough is the name of the first name of the president of, or the prime minister of Israel, Benjamin. Hey, the Father made this simple. It is not difficult. But guess what? We've got Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I am for him, not against him, looking to the West for affirmation. No, you don't look to the West for affirmation. The West is where the light wanes, daily and yearly. You look to the East, and one coming from the East. We don't look to the West for affirmation. What he's going to do, the Father is doing, is bringing the nations to a place where we have to look up and not at one another for our hope. And so that's actually a good thing. And it's going to be difficult because he is shaking everything that we hold dear. The foundations of our society are unraveling. People that manage cities and metropolises of millions of people don't know where to go to the restroom. They don't know up and down, left and right, bitter and sweet, good and evil. They're not rightly dividing and discerning, sadly, and it's sad. I mean, you want to look at people with compassion rather, but yet sometimes you're just like, man, wake up. Israel, U.S., and Russia to discuss Syria in trilateral meeting in Jerusalem. See, those are some of the big players. You guys know that Kim Jong-un promised Syrian President Bashar al-Assad all kinds of support against the Zionist entity. Well, now you can flip to your scriptures in one of a half a dozen locations and see pictures of the kings of the East. The kings of the East, the Orient, numbering 200 million men coming across the dry bed of the Euphrates River, which is Syria, Iraq, and part of Turkey. One of them, China also, promising boots on the ground to support the just causes of Syria. Against who? Well, against Israel. North, south, east, west. The Father divided those winds in the beginning. They will not come together if He has separated them. He divided the east wind and the west wind, the north wind and the south wind into their proper coordinates, quadrants rather. Syria and Russia bomb hospitals in Idlib after they were given coordinates in hope of preventing attacks. This happens daily, obliterating their own land. Scripture talks about the Assyrian in Isaiah, the king of Babel, Bab-el, the gate to the gods, or the gateway to God. To the north, destroying his own land first, his own land and people, then destroying and stripping the vine, which is Israel, the fig tree. Destroys his own land first, and then he leaves his thicket. He's called a lion there in Jeremiah. Leaves his thicket and heads south to destroy Israel. And when he crosses over that northern border of the Golan Heights, all the nations will tremble. Why? Because they have gathered there together, as you can see. That's a London publication, I believe, the Telegraph, into what is the threshing floor. It is the Father above that is gathering the nations. It is His hand that is stretched out upon the nations, and who can turn it back? Nobody. Syrian regime bombed a mosque in Faruma village in Idlib. It's in the north. Scripture talks about the son of perdition, the son of destruction, which we'll talk about later, will destroy everything that is worshipped. Everything that is worshipped. So that he will sit in the dwelling place of God in Jerusalem, on the Temple Mount, in a shrine or a fane, showing himself that he is a mighty one. This, of course, after he destroys his own land and then storms across the northern border, going right down through Dan, which is the northern border in the north of Israel, through Samaria, Judea, and even to the neck of Jerusalem. That's the exact opposite of what the Messiah said we were supposed to do in the Great Commission. What are we supposed to do? Go ye therefore into the uttermost parts of the world, even Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the earth? This isn't difficult, folks. The anti-Messiah comes in the exact opposite direction. How many of you ever have heard the gates of hell will not prevail? Have you ever heard that phrase? The gates of hell will not prevail. when the Messiah said that, he was standing at a place called Caesarea Philippi, at the base of Mount Hermon in the Golan Heights. And we'll show you that in a little bit on our screen, on a map. He was standing at the base of Mount Hermon in Caesarea Philippi, and he asked Peter, "Peter, who do you say that I am?" Perhaps you're familiar with this. And the story goes on, and he says, "Peter, upon this rock I will build my assembly, and the gates of hell will not prevail." He was standing at the threshold of what now separates the north and the south, Levant in Israel, north from south. It's, again, the Golan Heights, the strategic mountain range there, and specifically Caesarea Philippi at the base of Mount Hermon. That is where... What's that?
It's literally a rock.
It is literally a rock that he's standing there. So in his mind and in everything that he's talking about, he's speaking of this invasion in this day in which we live from the north, and said it will not prevail. Any questions so far? Try to help me keep it reeled into largely what we've discussed. We've got a fair amount to cover. Is it getting a little more comfortable? Cool, yeah. All right. What do y'all think? In the back, comments, anything? Good?
Well, a lot of times when the phrase is used that the gates of hell will not prevail, people assume that that's a defensive posture. And that's not, in fact, the way that it was written. It actually means that we use the word gates. It actually means whenever the hell comes to there, it will not be able to stand against what
No, it will
the
not.
Messiah has stood.
Indeed.
It's not that we assail hell, but hell assails the kingdom.
Indeed.
It cannot, and it will
It
not.
cannot. It cannot stand. The plan has failed completely and utterly already. The location where he's standing gives us an idea of the enemy mentioned throughout the Tanakh, or what's called the Old Testament, which is called the Northern Army, headed by the willful king of the north. But then there's also the kings of the east, the kings of the Orient, a numbering 200 million is what the scriptures say, which will come across the dry bed of the Euphrates River. And as I mentioned earlier, they have already, I can pull up these quotes, in fact we probably have some of them. They're already supporting the efforts of the Northern Army in the Northern Levant, which is comprised of Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Hezbollah and whatnot, led by the willful king of the north. That's their words, not mine. When the president of Iran says that the front lines and the head of the resistance is in Syria, and people in the west and in Jerusalem are like looking to the left and to the right, believe what comes out of someone's mouth. They say their head is in Syria, to the north. And so the enemy comes like a flood, it says. The flood waters erupted right there, right out of Becca Valley, which is it's in the Anti-Lebanon area, right between Syria and Lebanon. That's when the flood waters erupted right there. And so in the apostolic writings in the New Testament, when they're talking about, in Peter, he's talking about a flood, and Jude talks about the raging waves of the sea, and all of that, of course, is Levant, Middle Eastern-centric discussion that's going on. And we look at that, and it's kind of intangible oftentimes, because we don't know what the scriptures teach, sadly. Deliberate crop burning blamed on ISIS remnants compounds misery in war-torn Iraq and Syria. Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, that is the northern Levant, that is ancient Assyria, and Isaiah calls this latter-time destroyer the Assyrian and the king of Bab-El, the king of Bab-Elu, which is Babylon, which is to the north. Not Babylon to the east over in Iraq, but instead to the north. The Israeli Defense Forces destroy Hezbollah flagship attack tunnel after studying it. See, they're tunneling in through the northern border. Israel's doing their best to stop it. Israel will not stop it. The West will not stop what's coming across the southern border, and the West will not stop the warfare that is coming from the nations of the East either. Period. End of discussion. It is written and it will be done. We can show you in dozens of different locations where the willful king of the north with a great innumerable army attacks the mightiest nations on earth. The nations from a far-off western coastline that come against him. It's exactly what we're seeing staged on the international scene as we speak. Israel smashes 6th Hezbollah tunnel on Lebanon border. Netanyahu, pleased with Trump's approval of Israel map, including occupied Golan Heights. Now see, in order to turn your back on the east, who's coming from the east that Israel should be looking for?
Son of Man.
The Son of Man, the seed of David, is coming from the east. But we don't need to be looking, we can't look, how many faces do y'all have on your head? You've got a face on the front of your head, don't you? So in order to turn your back on the seed of David and the Son of Man coming from the east, you're going to need to look to the west. It's a picture of not trusting in the foundations of the scriptures and not looking to the one whom at some point they will mourn for when they realize that they need him. Looking up after trying to look everywhere else first. Looking at how many times, fathers, have your children been disobedient and you have to redirect them with the chin and lift their little heads up and cause them to look up so they'll listen to you. It is no different with us at all, being children. Donald Trump is not going to save Israel from difficulties or this country. Now we need to pray for Donald Trump. He's got a difficult job. It's a foolish woman that tears down the roof of her own head. And he's the president of this country. And we do well to pray for him. And I don't care if that's popular. Hamas leader Sinwar threatens to attack Tel Aviv with double force. So Hamas is a terrorist organization funded by Iran and Syria and Lebanon. And they're again threatening to attack Tel Aviv, which is the largest city there in the north. We're talking about a very small region, guys. When it ignites, it says in the prophets that he will make the governors of Jerusalem and Judah, let me back it up for you. Here's some visual aids for you, not difficult. He will make the governors of Jerusalem and Judah like a fire pan in a wood pile, a match that sets the forest ablaze. The forest. Now, how about, let's use storm terminology. We live here in the northern hemisphere. How do hurricanes work? They do this motion, don't they? So if you're looking north, where's the worst winds? I was doing it backwards from y'all's directions like this. North and east. Well, look at Jerusalem. Where's the worst destruction in the world seen right now? North and east. Also not difficult. North and east. And it spreads worldwide. Sadly. Because all the key players, the Western nations, are overwhelmingly supporting Israel, for which we should be thankful. And the Eastern nations are overwhelmingly, by and large, supporting the Islamic causes in the Middle East. The nations encamped around Israel. Hamas leader thanks Iran for long-range rockets threatening Tel Aviv. Catholics in Israel call for one-state solution. This is part of the ecumenical push. A one-world religion, a new world order, which is not new, it's old world chaos, is what it is. It's Babylon revised. And so a one-state solution is just, it'll be an abomination is what it'll be, with every manner of mixing and mingling in the Middle East, and compromise of core principles established from the book of Genesis onward that will have to be thrown right out of, like a baby with the bathwater, in order for that security. Remember, security is the goal. That's what they want, peace and security. Peace is shalom. Security is shalva. Two very different words, very different principles. That's why we like to huddle together and hide in our churches and our synagogues and our mosques and our reading rooms and temples and things like that, and cluster together like sheep. The whole world is the field. But sheep and goats like to cluster together. And so we do that for the purpose of security. I'm not going to tell you right now, there is one head of a global body, and he took a seat at the right hand of the Father a long time ago. So I don't know what's going on the corner. One head. And he is a stone the builders rejected. The builders rejected. Stop me when I lie to you. He's a stone that the builders rejected. Builders with what? Builders of brick and mortar. Brick and mortar is something man can control, and they all look the same. Turn right around and look, and you'll see it right there. They all look the same outwardly. Uniformity outward is the enemy of unity inwardly. And so he is interested in living stones, and there's not two of them that are the same. And it is a stone. The Hebrew word for stone or rock is the word, it's a Semitic contraction of two words, father and son. Father is Ab and son is Ben, and the union of the two is Eben, and that means stone or rock. And it is that the builders have rejected. And the builders are the builders. What's the motive for the building? Dollars. Buying and selling. Which, if done for the purpose of turning a blind eye to hard truth, is filthy lucre, is what the scriptures teach. If our endeavors to broaden our bank accounts causes us to turn a blind eye to the difficulties that will soon be in our lap right here in the middle of this country, folks, the whole country is flooded. It's been the worst in 124 years. We're going to feel that. We deserve to feel that, and we'll grow because of it. Because it is during hard times of leanness that we grow as individuals inside. Middle Israel, the king of Israel, has no clothes. I thought that was interesting because a guy came about 2,000 years ago, and they embarrassed him, and they scoffed at him, and they spit on him, and they mocked him, and they bludgeoned him, and they beat him, and that's the king of Israel. And the clothes he comes back with is going to cause people to hide in the rocks like cockroaches, in the clefts of the rocks when he returns. Instead, we get dictatorship, anarchy, which is the word Antichrist, the lawless one, and a tribal confederation. Tribalism is not the message that we need to be upholding today. It is sons and daughters under one Father above. So if we see tribal behavior over there in the Middle East, and we do, don't we? It's unbelievable. It is because of rejection of that message. Right on the dome of the rock it says, Allah has begotten no son. Well, then don't complain when you have dictatorships, anarchy, and tribal confederations. It says in Psalms 83 that the nations around about are confederacy against thee. Right around Israel, the nations of Gabal, Amalek, Tyre, which is Lebanon, Syria to the north, Aram, of course. And right down in verse 8, it says, the Assyrian, or Ashur, Assyria to the north, has come to help the descendants of Lot. Well, that's the Palestinian folks that are trying to forge a Palestinian state. And look who's singled out in verse 8. The Assyrian has come to help the descendants of Lot. And we're supposed to realize that's a moment of pause. Why? Because the one who will be peace and shalom in the Middle East, when he tramples over our high places, we will look to the one who comes from the east, the ruler from Bethlehem, and we'll be better off for it.
Scott.
But right now, we get dictatorship, anarchy, and tribalism. Go ahead, brother.
Sorry, you
I'm sorry, I'm going to jump out of here. I can't help that. But this is powerful because it's going to affect us all. And if it's new to you and you're hearing it for maybe the first time, go back and research what you're hearing. Now, you can't approach this with a spirit like waiting for me to make a misstep. I will detect that and I will fight against it, make no mistake about it. Because you have to step back and look at the larger picture. Don't approach things. As a Berean, we're supposed to seek that things be true. Not wait and lay a snare for our brother to try and pin a falsehood on him. That's not the right spirit. So if I make some assertion today that's incorrect, don't use that as an excuse to ignore the other 99.9% of the good things that I say. That won't help you. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, and I just wanted to add this in there, but you know.
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah,
Feel free to chime in.
You know, I know you've encountered it a lot, and someone that hasn't looked over the matter real thoroughly, you hear the Assyrian, and you might think, well, that's referring to Sennacherib, one of these guys that tried to campaign against Israel back in the day. And the truth is that Sennacherib is much like David was to Messiah. He becomes a template that the later authors build on to get this profile of the northern enemy. And it was actually Hafez Assad. I tried to find the quote again, man.
Hafez Assad is Syria's Assad's father.
Yeah,
the Sphinx of Damascus. The Sphinx of Damascus was.
He boasted once that the Syrian people, that they had inherited the cause and the wisdom of the ancient Assyrians, and even goes on to reference Sennacherib and Salmaneser, and the cause was to fight Western encroachment and basically to pave the road with the skulls of Jews. That was his whole thing.
Pave the road with the skulls of the Jews. So the things that I'm sharing from you are as deeply, the things that they hold dear are as deeply ingrained in their ideology as the things that I am sharing with you today are in ours. Those don't mix. It's oil and water. It's bitter and sweet. It's good and evil. It's not perfect. Neither Jacob nor Esau were perfect. Neither Isaac nor Ishmael were perfect. Neither one of them. One of them was a deceiver. And the father's not looking for perfect children. He's looking for honest children. I mean, any good father wants to see their child fall down and get back up again. As long as he just keeps getting back up. That's how we learn. We've got some more folks coming. All right, let's go to the next one. Al-Quds, that's what the Muslims call Jerusalem, is neither America's to give away nor Israel's to take, says Iran's Zarif. That's true. He's right about that. But sadly, the father gave Jerusalem to the sons of Israel. And the rightful king is a son of Israel that will come from the right hand, not the left. So again, facing east, your left hand is north, Balad Asham, which is the land to the north, and the right hand is, of course, the south, which is where Messiah comes from the head tribe of Judah that was stationed to the east of the tabernacle, and when they received a land grant, it was the southerly land grant. It's not difficult. It makes sense. Good stuff. On the eve of Jerusalem Day, Iran urges strong Muslim unity against Israel. Now, as I am sharing these things on this little group here, this testimony regarding Syria and Assad and the north and all that is being heralded by other brothers from the streets of Jerusalem right now. A former NBA basketball player named Nicholas Vanderlane, I don't know him, he did right by me. Let me put it that way. Anywhere you go on the internet in this modern age and you find out information about Syria and Antichrist and the Assyrian, most of that will be from some works that I've done. I've been sharing this since late 1996 regarding Syria and Assad and whatnot. Well, he's sharing it from the Damascus Gate. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but that's the broad gate. It's the broadest way in Jerusalem. The broad way of destruction. Not difficult here, once again. When you're facing east, that's the narrow, straight gate to the east. And the broad way, which leads to destruction, to the north, right up to the Damascus gate, to guess what? Destruction. Not difficult. And soon, tens of thousands of people that I have stood before in congregations all over the North American continent will be called to testify, and they will do so. They will rise up. Back when I was doing radio at the KTLW network in the West, with Pastor Jack Hayford and Gary Curtis in the West, our radio program, the Profound Prophecy Update, was aired during Kirk Cameron's Way of the Master program in 7 different states, and I believe in 22 different radio stations on FM radio. So all these people are going to be called to testify again and to give proper testimony. Hi, folks. Jewish members of parliament urge fellow Jews to attend anti-Israel Quds Jerusalem rally. So here you've got Jews in name, Judaizers, wanting Israel, joining with Islamic nations to divest in Israel and to turn their back on Israel. It defies logic, doesn't it, Paul? It's crazy.
Fifth column.
Fifth column. Yeah. Palestine is using rockets, not rocks, to counter Israel, according to Iran's President Rouhani. Now, how many of you guys know the story of David and Goliath? Yeah. So the victim mentality here is what's going on. It's a play on it. The reality is they're Goliath. The Goliath is the innumerable hordes to the east. And David is the little guy in the middle still today. So this nonsense about the victim mentality here is just crazy. Palestine using rockets supplied by Iran to counter Israel. Tehran billboard shows destroyed U.S.-Israeli warships or ships. Reads, "We drown them all." So last I checked, we're not doing this to them. I mean, is that what we do here as a people? Do we rally in the streets of to the tune of 1 million or 2 million people and chant for the death of our brother over there? No. And that's why we have been given power to deliver, because it isn't our inclination. Canada is actually arresting Christian pastors and banning them from speaking in public. I've been to Canada a few times, sharing about this message actually, to Prince George, British Columbia, and other places as well. But I could tell that there was a pretty foul climate even then, 6, 8, 10 years ago. So here we're arresting people, and I watched the video of this fellow. He was being loving, but he was speaking truth, and they would not hear it. 150,000 growers, 16 million acres, impacted by the flooding. The father of my daughter's husband is a crop duster, and he says as far as you can, he flies all over there, just as far as you can see, it's nothing but water right now.
And he said they were not going to get their winter wheat crops in.
They were not going to get their winter wheat crops. By the way, my wife and I are proactive, and we're going to be doing some reasonable but bulk orders of food. If you guys want to participate in that, we're going to do that, be proactive in cutting this off the pass, this and other things. So if you guys would like to participate in that, I'm not looking for a commitment from you. We're doing it regardless. But the more people that pitch in, drives the price down on bulk food orders and stuff like that. Again, I want to buffet it by saying all the beans and rice in the world won't profit you if things aren't right inside. Matter of fact, the Father can allow a person to get so depraved in their mind that they could be sitting right next to food and not know what to do with it. So let's not be those folks. Ultimately, our hope is above and in Him, and in that is genuine peace. Iran could make nuclear weapon in 6 to 8 months, says the former IAEA deputy. That's the International Atomic Energy Agency. And that was a few days ago. I don't see the date on that one, but so That's the IAEA saying that within 6 to 8 months. Now, Israel's not going to have that. You just need to go ahead and know that. I remember a long time ago, Benjamin Netanyahu was in an interview. It was a small group like this, maybe a little bigger, probably bigger. He's the prime minister, but it was a small group setting. And someone asked Netanyahu, how far will you go to see that Iran doesn't get nukes? And he said 2,000 miles. That was his answer, which is the distance to Tehran, the capital from Jerusalem. So I thought that was pretty clever there. We've got some angry little Jews in the Middle East that aren't going to be put under the sword again, not without a fight. And I think it's fantastic. As if you're going to have a neighbor in that region, that's about as good a neighbor as you could get. And I'm under no illusion or delusion that Israel's perfect. Israel's not perfect. The United States isn't perfect. But I'm not interested in equating crazies that behead people and cut off heads of women and children with some of the madness we see in smaller sects of our society. Navy pilot says UFO he saw off California was not of this world. Time magazine. So, interesting. More on that some other time, perhaps. Assad regime continues assault on Idlib. It's the very north of the Levant, near where he was from. Bombing civilians and residential areas. That's an interesting headline. Look at the surrounding land. That's a metro. Look, they're just devastated. Those buildings are just absolutely shattered from bombings, from aerial bombardments and things from Russia. Scripture says he destroys but not by his own power, and destroys wonderfully even. And he, in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 18, and even before that in 16, he says that he destroys his own land and people, the Assyrian, king of Babylon, to the north. You have destroyed your own land and people, it says, first. Then the lion, which is the Arabic word Al-Assad in Jeremiah 4 and 5, comes out of his thicket and seeks to lay waste Israel, the fig tree, to the south, and strip the vine, it says elsewhere, and destroy the cities in the northern of Israel, and the cities in which we trust, abroad, of course, with the allies. Syria's new Assad statues send a sinister message, we're back. It's Stalinistic, isn't it? It's that they learned that from Syria is a Arab republic, and much of the modern infrastructure in Syria is patterned after Soviet Stalinist ideology. Iron fist. In the scriptures it says that he seeks to destroy. It is in him to destroy not merely a few nations. How is it that he doesn't know it? Isn't that something? He believes his cause is just. Every good tyrant believes their cause is just. We should be talking about ways to end abortion. Agree. If you look in the Dead Sea Scrolls and want to clear a room at the Church of the Chosen Frozen, you will find out that the watchers in heaven are the ones that taught mankind how to cast off the embryo so that it dies. Abortion. One of them, you can look up the word Tamiel, T-A-M-I-E-L, or Kasdeya, K-A-S-D-E-Y-A, and it is the name of a watcher that descended in the days of Jared before the flood, fallen angel, and taught women how to abort the baby. Rock solid scriptural precept when those beings came down and taught mankind how to do all kinds of things that the Father did not want us to know how to do.
Scott, in case someone's not aware of that, where did
based on the looks, there's a few people that aren't aware of it, but
where did they stand?
Huh?
Where did the watchers stand?
Oh, the Golden Heights, where the gates of hell won't prevail. So how many of you ever heard, whatsoever you shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven? beneath the rocks there in southern Syria, one of them is named Azazel. Azazel is the term in Hebrew where later, much later, after the flood, the principle of the sacrifice of the goat on Yom Kippurim, the scapegoat is, of course, what? Azazel. That's where that term comes from. Long before, at the time of the flood, the watchers came down and taught mankind how to do all kinds of. They left their abode, is what the apostolic writings say. They left their place above and taught men how to do all kinds of unseemly things. Angels. Peter talks about it. Jude talks about it. The Messiah talks about it when he talks about a good watcher. Daniel mentions watchers, or a good watcher. So when Messiah talks about the shepherd as a good shepherd leads through a door, and he says the porter opens the door, it's a watcher. The term watcher. The four coordinates of the heavens are watched by four angels. Watchers, good ones. They're mentioned in the canon, and some of them are mentioned in the canon, Michael, Gabriel, and the rest of them are mentioned in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so the angel opens the door for the shepherd, and the sheep hear his voice, and they follow him out of it. So we look in the scriptures where we hear, come up hither, come up here. It's a certain resurrection of the dead at that time. And so we know that is all connected to, it's a reversal of the curse of what happened at Mount Hermon when the fallen angels came down to Mount Arnon, or Hermon, which is in the Golan, between Syria and Israel. Again, that is the flashpoint for the cosmological war in the heavens. What happens is mankind makes a covenant with death by breaking the laws of the Father above. And they will make friends with the forces of darkness. And it says that the willful king of the north will honor a foreign, unknown, alien god, which his ancestors did not know. And with this God's help will attack the mightiest nations on earth. He will attack the mightiest fortresses, claiming this God's help, whom he will acknowledge and increase with glory. He will cause them to rule over many, and this is important, guys, Daniel 11:39, and he will divide the land, that is the land of Israel, for his own gain. The land in question, this is important because you will see this. In fact, if you're astute to prophecy already, you're already seeing it. The land in question is the Golan Heights in northern Israel. It's a strategic mountain range north of the Sea of Galilee that will also give the Syrians control of the water rights from the fresh water supply in the Galilee. Also, the west bank of the Jordan River will be part of a Palestinian state. If you guys remember when they gave up Gaza, when Israel gave up Gaza, there with the signs they were saying, today Gaza, tomorrow Jerusalem.
فهذه الأرض أرض بلاد الشام، هذه الأرض المباركة التي أحبها الله وأحبها رسوله، فحظاها الله في هذا الشعب الطيب. وعندما قلت في يوم من الأيام أن سوريا الله حاميها، فلم أكن أقصد على الإطلاق بأننا شعب الله المختار كما يفكر البعض، أو أن الله ميز سوريا عن غيرها من البلدان والشعوب، فالله يحب كل الشعوب في الأرض، ولكن عندما يحب الله أرض يمنحها شعبا طيبا واعيا صامدا قويا وفيا.
And at the time of the end, the king of the south. If you flip to the map in the back of your Bible, you will quickly find out that the word south is the word Negev. It's a reference to the southern half of Israel. That's when the realms merge. The heavenly and the earthly, the things that Father separated in the beginning. There will be a battle in heaven. And every foul, unclean spirit of the cosmos, is what the word in the Greek is, will be cast down to earth. And at that point, earth will be a prison for every, like I said, foul, unclean being from above.
If it's his policy, you can count on it being deceptive. And through his policy, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by security. It's the word shavah. It's not shalom. It's through security he shall destroy many. He will also take his stand against who? How's that going to fare for him? The Prince of Princes, but he will be broken, though no human could topple him, or without hand.
والأولوية القصوى الآن والتي لا تدانيها أي أولوية هي لاستعادة الأمن الذي نعمنا به لعقود وكان ميزة لنا ليس في منطقتنا فحسب بل على مستوى العالم. وهذا لا يتحقق إلا بضرب الإرهابيين القتلة بيد من حديد. فلا مهادنة مع الإرهاب ولا تهاون مع من يستخدم السلاح الآثم لإثارة البلبلة والانقسام. إن الدولة القوية هي التي تعرف متى وكيف تسامح وتعرف كيف تعيد أبنائها إلى طريق.
U.S. companies moving production of goods out of China. Good. That's good for us. We're supposed to give honor where honor's due and credit where it goes. And Donald's done a good job with fighting for the country. He can be pretty obtuse. I get it. But you know what? We need somebody that's a fighter. And I look back and I understand that in order for West and East to butt heads, they're going to have some people that are willing to lock horns, and we have that. Andy Barr goes to court to help defend Donald Trump's border wall. What are some things you guys have seen regarding the border wall?
They're built anyway.
They are, all right. What is your as far as the familial lines? What do most of your family members think about the border wall and whatnot? I'm just inquiring for my own. Go ahead, Patrick.
I think that, like a lot of people, it depends on where you are. Depends on who you're following. I mean, most of the people that are attached to the world system, they're not in support of the wall.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking at, uniting all the religions and all these different things. This is a world system that is controlled by Hassan.
The adversary, Satan.
They have bought into the system.
Sadly.
They have flipped everything around because the system is just it's a counterfeit for the kingdom of Yahweh. It's a counterfeit for everything that he put here for us to do. We're looking for all the answers to all the questions and all the good things and all the prosperity and all this stuff is in the system. And so so those people that are following that are not really in support of the wall. But those that want to see America a safer place. Obviously, there was a guy a long time ago. His name is Joel Skousen. I don't know if people are familiar with him, but he actually had a video called strategic relocation, and it was about relocating somewhere in the United States that's safer than some of the cities. Well, I mean, he said a long time ago that we will be infiltrated from the south by terrorists, that they would come in here, bring dirty bombs and all this stuff. Those people that are not willing to see that happen here in America, they're in support of the wall.
Sure.
But it depends on where you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, brother.
We would be silly not to think that with the connection of Maduro, Venezuela's leadership in general, following Hamas's and the asymmetrical warfare that they've mastered in the Middle East.
Haven't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're the leaders of it, and we haven't technically beat them
Right.
at any field yet, because asymmetrical is such a challenge to a conventional force. But we would be silly to not think that their capabilities to do the border tunnels and stuff, but the dirty bombs just haven't come yet.
Right.
Those agents, those techniques just have not been employed yet on our southern border. The people are probably already inside of our borders. We've heard of the sleeper cells and all that.
Right.
That's, in my humble opinion, that's a big role that Venezuela's taking on covertly. And Russia does now have people in Venezuela.
Yeah.
Syria does as well. that all equates to something. We just haven't seen the fruit of it yet.
Right.
But it's absolutely there.
Indeed. Agreed on all points. Yes, sister, you had something to say? Fire away.
I was just telling him that we the people are building the wall as we speak.
I didn't hear.
We the people.
Yeah.
They're building the wall as we speak.
Right.
So if you're on a piece of land, they'll come and build it, and it took them a week just to build so much of it. So they used all that money that was collected on GoFundMe, and they built it already. So they need more.
That's
and it takes like
proof that
30 cents per person.
private sector can do it a lot faster.
So they have to build it. In 1 week, they'll build this humongous wall, and they're gonna start again.
I
They're gonna
think-
build it 3 times before they run out of money.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
They had a little boy collected a bunch. I saw when that little boy collected a bunch of money for building a wall. I mean, people want to do the right thing. He got it going, but it's told to do. That's what
Yeah.
we stand with.
Yeah.
And Scott, as far
Yeah.
as the familial lines, I think it very much, and this is just kind of coming to me right now, it really does go right along with the wicked and the seeing things that are not.
Oh, man.
That it generally does, to say what he already said, does seem to line up that the people who think you can go to the bathroom in whatever bathroom or whatever also seem to think that you can just have anybody. Why have borders? You know,
Right.
those trains of thought seem to be running in the same
Right.
opposing groups.
It's a disconnect. It's like
Yes.
the head of a helium balloon on top of someone's shoulders. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, this is directly related to Genesis chapter 1. Let me tell you how. In the beginning, the woman saw that the tree was good and pleasing to the eye. And then she partook. And the man said, yeah, you know what? Oh, cool. Yeah, let's do that. And so that's 2 bad ideas, and now we're all in hot water. And before that, the Nachash, a seraph Nachash. It's an angelic being, not a snake, from above, in the waters above. In the beginning, the Father divided light and darkness, Genesis creation day 1. And day 2, he divided the waters above, where the seraph Nachash and the cherubim, the serpents from above, their beings, wise and beautiful beings from above, where they dwelt. And on day 3, he of course called forth dry land from the waters below and separated the seas and all that. Day 4, he established the luminaries in the heavens, the lights, the sun, the moon, and the stars for timekeeping purposes, scriptural timekeeping purposes. And that's what the Dead Sea Scrolls testify of as well. And so the seraph Nachash, it means a shiny, divine enchanter that is a serpent from above, technologically advanced, far greater than we could imagine. And all of those messengers with him. And there are a great many types of them, and they are brilliant and yet crafty and cunning. And so when the heavens are koshered or cleansed, 42 months before, 42 months is half of a scriptural year. I'm sorry, half of a scriptural cycle of 7 years. And 42 months before Messiah returns, they will be cast out of the heavens and will agree to give Al-Wachash, or the beast, power to continue for 42 Chodeshim. All these little roads that seem to be disconnected with Stephen Hawking, or who's that other evolutionist that's filled with so much animosity and vitriol? Richard Dawkins, and Joe Rogan, and some of the other folks that are chomping at the bit for some enlightenment from above to take place. You're going to get it. And men will stand facing darkness and say that light has come, the answer. And they will be deceived like they're deceived now. Because in the beginning, we saw the tree was good, but it wasn't. He said it's not good for you to partake of that. Because when you do, you'll be aware of knowledge of good and evil. And today I say to you, #welcome to the show. We're knowledgeable in good and evil. And now we do good and we do evil. Everyone in this room does good and does evil. The word, again, wicked means to bend or twist, as in a candle. That's what the word weak comes from. The weak means to turn away from, as in the work week. Now, is the work week a chord and band that affects everyone in here? It is it not? Yes, it is. So the work week is reflective of a turning away. When did we need a work week? Did that come before or after sin? Thank you. It's a reflection of turning away from the good way in the beginning, the way of our Father. And then later, we became slaves and found ourselves in Egypt, slaves and worshiping other gods. That's the first command, is not to honor the Sabbath day, command number 4, as some would have it, but first have no other gods before me. That's the first. Remember, I am the Lord your God that brought you out of the land of Egypt. Have no other gods before me. Because why? They had other deities, beings from above that they were worshiping and building monuments, and our modern pop culture is replete with ancient Babylonian occult worship of the host, hashtag host of heaven, which the governors of Judah and Jerusalem will even worship, according to Jeremiah chapter 8, right after they worship the sun, moon, and stars.
They're not just doing that in pop culture, they're having sex with them on videos on MTV now.
Oh yeah, Katy Perry has a song. Katy Perry has more followers on Twitter than the president of the United States, and has a song about can't wait to have intercourse with extraterrestrials.
Where have I been?
Where have you been? You are out of it, Thomas.
On the wrong station.
All right, move. That is funny. That just couldn't have been better.
You know
Yeah, Patrick, fire away. I'm sorry, Patrick.
Oh,
Patrick, what were you going to say?
I don't know if anybody else noticed it. I know I have, and I think it's all part of the plan. But there's a serious increase in mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if anybody else has noticed it, but the amount of people that are just looking for inward power. I mean, all yoga,
Kabbalah.
Kabbalah.
Yep.
Everything is just increasing, just dramatically. It's unreal.
Secrets.
yeah.
And they're learned from those watchers, which are squarely connected to Golan. This is going to come on us like a flood from above. The waters burst forth from beneath the earth and above. That's what's in Messiah's mind, not the days of Moses, but as in the days of Noah before the flood, at the time of the flood. That's what's in the backdrop of the Messiah in his mind as the bull or the example, if you will. Because the restoration that Messiah came to do is of a global nature. It is restoring the whole house, the animals, the seas, the beasts of the field, not just a priesthood at the base of Mount Sinai. You will be needing to look to a mountain higher than Sinai, higher than Ararat, and higher than Zion below very, very soon when the enemy comes like a flood. We will all be looking up to crying out because of the hardship that's coming upon the earth.
Prevailing, I guess you'd call it doctrine of all polytheism in the ancient Near East is that the gods crawled out of the elements. So you have like an elemental soup, you have a chaos waters that they crawled out of. Now because if you're looking at your gods as something that's subservient, that crawled out of the elements, then naturally what follows is that, well, I can do that too.
Right.
Now, that's all you see today with all this ancient alien stuff. It's just repackaged. Panspermia, ancient aliens, all this pantheon of comic book heroes everybody worships. It's the same thing. It's just Babylonian religion repackaged. And the sole exception in the whole world was the idea that, hold on, there's a God,
right,
a Father, who is before and above all the elements, who spoke them in order.
Yeah, that's right. That's why when the Apostle Paul talks about the rudiments of the world and the worship of those who by nature are not gods, but instead angels, that's what he's talking about. The cosmological beings from above that taught us astrology and all of those things even. Russia to deliver controversial missile system to Turkey within 2 months. Russia to double global food exports and ready to replace U.S. agricultural products in China. See, as we're having tough times over here, they're having difficulties over there too. And we see Russia now aligning with China, of course, and China aligning with North Korea, and all of them have verbally, the heads of all of them, have verbally and militarily expressed support for Syria against Israel. That took it all right down to the threshold, or the threshing floor. And the threshing floor of the entire nations is the region from the Golan Heights right down to Jerusalem. That's where they will be gathered to be crushed in the battle of during the Gog of Magog conflict and whatnot. World food prices rise in May amid weak production outlook for maize, corn. Dramatic rise in African migrants arriving at U.S. border. So now we've got African migrants, and I'm not saying all the folks are bad. That's stupid. That's not for me to judge. The idea of not having border control is dumb beyond measure. I have, it's funny. I'll say some things on the Twitter, and nobody will know what to say. But there's this one little guy in Africa. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, I can't pronounce his name.
He's off on it, dude. I mean, he gets it. He knows what's going on. That's my brother over there from another mother. That's who that is. And he knows what's going on in the Middle East, and he's got a keen eye. And so I'm not going to look at the external and judge it based on what someone looks like outside. I just know that we need to know who our neighbors are. You know what I'm saying? And so border control is a fundamental responsibility of any sovereign nation. Dramatic rise in African migrants arriving at U.S. border. U.S. troops to spend a month painting the border wall. I mean, you really got to chuckle a little bit and think, I mean, we are at a place here where as a country, people are trying to crawl over a wall to get to us. I mean, I'm stepping back and thinking, this just doesn't end well. You know, I mean, it doesn't. But so we have to do something to, it's largely successful from what I understand. But is it going to help keep Russian warplanes and no, none of that. No, it's not. It's not going to help that a bit. U.S. Chamber of Commerce threatens to sue Trump over Mexican tariff. Says it won't help border crisis, and Mexico is suffering too.
Did he back on it now? Didn't he? I think they made an agreement, right?
I'm not sure.
I believe so.
U.S. and Russia blame each other after warships almost collide in East Asian waters. Did you guys see that on the news? That's pretty crazy.
About every 6 months, Russia has a sub that pops up. They put it in the news, like, it was in the Gulf a year or so ago, and then...
I imagine it goes on all the time, doesn't it? Constant.
San Diego, and it's called 4 or 5 years ago.
Probing, right. It's probably over for us. Record flooding pummels Midwest when farmers can least afford it. That's sad. I'm going to leave this up here for a minute, and then I wanted to move to a brief presentation about some of the things I've talked about to give you guys some sources that you can look up. But what are some things that you guys do when you see, I mean, locally, what are you doing to prepare? Thomas, you have a pretty good sized farm. Hallelujah for that. You guys are learning to grow your own food and have animals and...
I mean, so much of that is just, I'm not going to tell my life story, but
No, go
I
share with
was
us.
brought here. You know what I mean?
I do.
It's not of my doing, and so it always is just very humbling and amazing to see my life unfold and how we are put where we have been put during this time.
Mm-hmm.
And while some of it aligned with my personal desires, a lot of it was clearly of none of my doing, you know.
Awesome.
And I say that all in the best ways, like it was all good.
You've really been able to prosper here too. Watching your family's feet trod the country and knowing you're blessed going and coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To kind of tie into, you mentioned states' rights, and, I grew up in Northern California, I moved to Nevada as soon as I could. So I watched Nevada in a few short years fall to basically a California, and you'll just continue to see that until it is. And we made it here, and then only after living here about a year, long story short, I went to the Pacific Northwest to help search for a missing hiker there. And I hadn't been in that area in a while. It was amazing after coming to the quote-unquote Idlib, which was just a haven for us, because we were not of what Nevada was becoming. Coming here was home. And going to the Pacific Northwest and seeing the entrenched mysticism and all that stuff that we were talking about, I could feel it in the air. It was so black and white, and
it's dark and weighty.
It was dark, and I remember coming home after that back to here and going, these places are all not the same. We take it for granted. America's a beautiful country in that you have different cultures and different, all sorts of things. But what we have here in the southeast, middle of the country, whatever you want to say, is something absolutely worth protecting.
Amen.
We can only do so much because it's all going to happen according to what He has planned. But yeah,
there's a quote in a movie called Lincoln where someone asked Lincoln for some water. He said, "For good water, you're going to have to go to Tennessee." They asked for a glass of water in there. I mean, it's a land that drinks up the waters, and it's a land of hills and valleys. It is a really blessed and fertile land.